Welcome to the Haunted Ride.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Haunted Ride. I'm your host, Melissa Cummins, and thank you for joining me today. So, to begin with, I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope you get your snacks and your tea, and you're staying hydrated, and you're eating because that's important. And I hope you're just ready for, actually, not really a ghost story today. So I had asked you guys if you had any questions, any topics that you wanted to talk about, or that you wanted to send in, or you wanted me to research, to just send it in, and then I would talk about it on the show. And I got one. So to begin with, Alice, thank you for being the first person to actually submit something into the podcast. Thank you for being the person to ask this question. And thank you for really this episode, because it's all dedicated to your question and really to you. The question actually sort of made me smile, because obviously I have been trying to get people to send stuff in, and that's been really important. Oh, segue into that. Send your things into thehauntedride.com or email them to thehauntedride@gmail.com to get them on the show like Alice did. And we can talk about it, or, share experiences or anything like that. That's what I want this to be about. Also, subscribe to the show, because the more people who subscribe to the show, the wider of an audience this reaches, and hopefully the more people who will be willing to send things into the show, and the more people who feel comfortable sending things into the show, and just having this community around this podcast, which would be amazing. That's exactly what I want. So send in your things and share and subscribe. I know that I'm not entirely sure what's been going on lately, but I looked at the views for my podcast, and you guys have gone insane. I have a number in my mind that I hope to reach every month. And it was only because I reached it the first month that I said, okay, well, if I'm reaching this the second month, then, I'm still going in a good direction, and that's just going to be my base number. And also, if I'm struggling getting close to that number, let me look and see what episodes are getting more views, things like that. Sort of try to see, what have I done differently. So to begin with, when I first started doing the episodes, I would jump right into the stories. You guys seem to like that, which is great, but we always do have some sort of business to discuss right before the episode, so I have been trying to make it a little bit shorter, so I still get that out to you guys, and that you guys are able to get a little bit of my personality on the podcast, but not make it too long for you guys. I just use the views and sort of the audience feedback as my way of knowing what am I doing right, what am I doing wrong, even on episodes where I didn't feel like the editing was the best. If you guys are still viewing it and you guys are still sticking around to listen to the episode, okay, well, then I was just being a little too hard on myself, things like that. So you guys viewing the episodes and sticking around and listening to them, actually, I do use that feedback in the really sort of entire structure of this podcast. But recently, you guys essentially hit my number in a week. I don't know what happened. I don't know who subscribed or who shared this, and somehow more people came, and I am blown away. So thank you guys. Just thank you so much. I don't even know what to say. Thank you. Now, being that I just talked about the fact that we have business and that I'm trying to get into these a little bit quicker, let's jump in. So Alice's email was about relationships, and it says, not a story, but I'm curious, what do you think of having relationships with a paranormal creature, friendships, loving relationships, or just some type of emotional connection to a different being? What is your opinions on the subject? I did a little bit of research, and I do actually have a story. I've shared it before, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. And I have another story that is actually going to, I'll say part of it in this episode, and then I will dedicate an entire episode to it, which will be spirit guides. Quick shout out to Ghost in the Night and his latest host and latest episode that he had on the show, because that episode really helped me feel like my experience with my spirit guide was normal. but if you have a spirit guide and you have someone who's talking with you and almost kind of coaching you through things, I feel like that sort of falls into what Alice is asking, which is really basically, what do I think about having a relationship with a ghost or another entity? And I feel like that's normal. Now, I will give a little bit of a forewarning to this episode because I did do research, and you have to be careful about what you type into Google. So I typed having a relationship with a ghost, and basically everything that came back was sexual related. I did sort of change the writing on that and to get something else than just that on today's podcast, but obviously we are going to talk about that a little bit, and that's not really something that I've broached on the podcast before. I do mark these episodes as explicit, so just sort of forewarning about what this episode is going to get into. Obviously, I'm not going to be too explicit about anything, but it does broach the subject of sex. So just to let you know before you dive in. So in my research, I found out that there's actually a word and a definition for this particular sort of relationship where you either have sex with a ghost, or you are attracted to a ghost, or you have a desire to have sex with a ghost. It's called spectrophilia. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but it seems pretty self-explanatory on how to be said, which makes sense to me. I mean, I don't think it's weird at all to want to have sex with a ghost. I mean, if you're, you know, and if this has happened to you, I'm sorry, but if your significant other passed away and you were with this person and that's who you like to be with, I mean, your sort of physical desires don't just go away. So if you're thinking about that person, I mean, is that spectrophilia? Because it's your I mean, that's your person. That's who you were with. You miss that person. That's who you've been with. Like, if you shared those experiences with that person, or you wanted to and you didn't get a chance to before something happened, I mean, I think it would be natural that your mind would go there. So I can't really say that's necessarily wanting to have sex with a ghost. I think that's wanting to have sex with someone who's now passed away. And it's not like anything weird or creepy or even perverted. It's just you miss this person and this was your person, and that's the person who comes to your mind. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Also, on the subject of this, there are actually quite a few ghost stories about people who have had sexual relations with a ghost. I know the most popular one, and one that came out a couple months ago, was the woman who said that she had sex with like 20 partners and was engaged and going to be married to her ghost. I will never discount anyone's experience at all. I read a little bit of the article. I'm not really a news person, so I had heard a little bit about this story just in passing, but I'd never read anything. And in reading the story a little bit, my only concern is that she said something about it following her from the UK, I guess back to her establishment or wherever she lives. And I'm slightly concerned about that because there has been times, there's even an episode on one of the paranormal shows, I want to say maybe like The Haunted or My Haunted House or something, where there's a woman who kind of gets a little bit obsessed with this guy, and she starts seeing him. So if she is in the middle of that particular act, she starts seeing him. And it gets to like a point where she starts feeling like he's there with her, and basically like that's who she's with. And my one concern about that is, as someone who is currently in a long distance relationship, when you're with someone, you want to be with that person, and you want to share as much time as you can with that person. It's a natural relationship. So what are you cutting back in your life in order to maintain that relationship? That's my one concern, is there's a difference between you have this relationship and you have an obsession. And if she's talking about that many ghosts, I'm just slightly concerned about like the activity going on in her home. Is she a haunted person? Like, I'm not concerned about her experience. If that's what happened to her, that's what happened to her, and I'll believe her. There's no reason for me not to believe her. There's no reason for me to think it's weird. But my concern is she okay? Is she still living a happy, healthy life? If she is, great. Then there you go, problem solved. And I think that part of where this comes into is that balance. Like, are you still balanced in your life? And if you're not, what's going on? Because there is, I'm a huge mythology buff. I will be honest with you, I've thought numerous times of doing episodes on mythology on this podcast because technically speaking, some of the things that happen are kind of out of the norm of being natural, and so that sort of makes them either supernatural or paranormal, and they fit the theme, but I haven't done it yet. We'll see. We'll see if that naggingness in me continues, but it's been there for a little bit, so we'll see what happens. But I do get to shine on it here because there is the term incubus or succubus. So either or is essentially thought to either be an evil spirit or a demon. They're never thought to be a good spirit, but they're thought to be either an evil spirit or a demon, which seduces and has sexual intercourse with the opposite sex. So an incubus is male and a succubus is female. There are tons of stories, actually, where that's the case. I mean, there's stories in mythology where a god or goddess came down and disguised themselves as someone's lover. They did the deed. They got pregnant. Lover found out. Whole problem, etc., etc. So there's the movie Clash of the Titans is built on that. Like, if you've seen the original or the new remake, Clash of the Titans, that story is the original mythological story. And that's essentially what an incubus or a succubus typically does. It typically either it's that you're lonely and that you're wanting someone to be there and no one's there, and then this thing kind of appears to you and you believe it's a dream, so you don't fight it off, or it takes the shape and or presence of someone who you would normally have that relationship with. And there's tons of stories with that. I did also find one article, though, that kind of annoyed me a little bit when I read it, because apparently people often refer to, if you have a feeling where you've had sex with a ghost, they will think that it's sleep paralysis. Like, that's apparently now become a normalized thought process, that if you have sex with a ghost, it's sleep paralysis. I don't agree with that. I think that sleep paralysis is an actual thing. I think some experiences are sleep paralysis, and I think some are not. And I'm sorry, but if you physically feel, like the telltale sign, and I have not done a lot of research into sleep paralysis. I just know that my personal feelings is there's a difference. But what I've heard from a lot of people's stories is that it's if you can move. If you can move, it's sleep paralysis. If you can't, then it's not. But it's also if the thing continues to occur after you move, which would make sense. I mean, if a presence is there, just because you have your eyes closed and you don't open them doesn't mean it's not there. And there's also the case with some entities can only really affect you at nighttime or when you're sleeping. So just because even in the case that you couldn't move doesn't mean that you're just having sleep paralysis and nothing's there. There could be something there. Like, you don't know unless there's other experiences going on or whatever it is that you feel personally in your gut. So I can't sit back and say, oh, if you had spectrophilia, that you have sleep paralysis. I don't think that's the same thing. Now, breaking away from the thought of an actual, relationship or sexual relationship with a ghost, you can have, a normal connection with a ghost. I mean, there's tons of people who, instead of exorcising a ghost or cleansing a ghost from their home or their residence or their business, they decide to live with it. They just go, you know what, you've been here longer than I have, and so we're just going to live together. And in my opinion, that is essentially cohabitation with a ghost. That is a form of relationship, because if you live with anyone, even if you don't see them all the time, you have a relationship with this person. Like, you know them, you have a little bit of a bond to them. So in my personal opinion, I think that is a type of relationship with a ghost. Just like some people, they become friends with a ghost. I told a story on here before about my ghost friend, Cassandra. And that was not her real name. I know that was not her real name, but that was just the name that I called her. You know, in the haunted house, there were a lot of scary experiences. There were a lot of times where I just was terrified. It took me a really long time for me to learn to protect myself and how to guide myself through these situations, and that what was going on was okay. And so when she was there, I felt safe. I felt like, and I wouldn't even really see as much activity when she was around, but she was only around for a short period of time. But I figured that out very quickly. And so I wanted that relationship with her. I wanted her to stay around because she was helping me. She was helping me feel like I was okay. And then also I had a friend, and I would come home, and I remember I would tell her about my day at work. And it was weird because my day at school. Different time. My day at school. It's weird because I never saw her outside of the house. It was like she was bound to the house and couldn't leave. But you know, if I needed a shoulder, if I needed whatever, she was there, and she was actually like a good spirit. And she would appear as a shadow person. I believe the story that I told was that she braided my hair. I was sitting in front of my computer, and she showed up, and my hair was annoying me or something, and she started braiding it. And it would have been one thing if it wouldn't have gone into a braid, but it did. Like, I could feel it going into a French braid. And at that time, I didn't know how to French braid my hair, so I couldn't have done it myself. And I specifically didn't know because every time I would attempt to braid my hair, I'd braid it too tight, and it would give me a headache. And I was like, the perfect, like, French braid. It was perfectly straight. It didn't bother my head. So she did that. Like, I didn't do anything with it at all. That was all her. And I loved that spirit. Like, that spirit was everything. That spirit was a break, really, for me in the activity. It was a break for me to feel like, as normal of a person as I could. So, of course, like, I think that you can have friendships with a ghost. I had a friendship with her. My grandmother, you know, I've talked about the fact that I feel like she's still around. I've talked about the fact that I've seen her and smelled her. Sometimes I swear that I'll hear her voice, or I have heard her voice. And, I mean, it's not like I've ever been like, okay, no, you can't be around me. I mean, that's a connection with a ghost, and that's a relationship with a ghost. So I personally feel like having a relationship with a ghost, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. No matter the relationship, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I have had past life regression, and in one of, I'm not entirely really sure how to explain it, but there was a specific memory that I would have, and it was with this person who, in that period of time, we were together. It was like I was the female, but I wasn't the female. But it was like he was acting out the memory, but then he knew how to, like, disengage from it and also, like, be with me. So he would talk to me, and I actually remember, like, that went on for about a period of 2 weeks. And then he told me one day, he said that he wasn't going to be able to see me anymore. And that he would still, like, always be around, protecting me if he could, but I guess it was, like, his time to kind of go. And his, like, one mission was to show me our lives together at that period of time. That meant a lot to me, because the thing is, I wanted to see him, because he'd become this, like, I could actually sleep peacefully at night. I wouldn't feel, like, alone in the room. So it was, like, it's this weird kind of place. It's almost like a break in reality, where, like, while I'm in a dream state, I still see this person. I can wake up and still feel this person. I still feel someone next to me. I still feel a warmth. I still feel like the room itself doesn't feel cold. It doesn't feel dark, as dark. So it was like he was there with me but he could only show what he needed to show to me in my dreams, but he was actually physically there with me. And I'll talk more about like past life regression and spirit guides and things like that in another episode, but my point is I've been in this place, I've had a relationship with a ghost, Cassandra, this dream memory past life regression thing. I have a spirit guide, and I speak to my spirit guide, like I talk to her out loud. She's guided me through a lot in my life, and I wouldn't be where I am or who I am without that guide. And so that's a relationship with a spirit. I mean, I've had her as a spirit guide since I was 4. She's constantly been like a guiding force in my life. So if that's not a relationship with a ghost, I don't really know what is. So I think to wrap this up in a neat little bow, I think that you can completely have a relationship with a ghost or a spirit. I think that it's normal. I don't think it's creepy. I don't think it's weird. I think that the term relationship it is really just a connection. I think Alice said it best when she said just some type of emotional connection to a different being. And I think at the end of the day, that's what all of this is a connection. It's a connection with this ghost or a connection with this entity. And it's all about how comfortable we feel with that connection. As long as it doesn't cross a boundary that's unhealthy, I think it's perfectly fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it should be welcomed. I think that as long as you feel safe and you feel comfortable, it's good to go. It's just, don't let it be unhealthy for you. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. A little different this time. I actually kind of liked it. I liked being able to do some research and read some articles and find out some new things that I didn't know because, nobody knows everything. So it was great to learn something new, and I love being able to do that. So Alice, I thank you for that if you're listening. And everybody, if you have a topic at all, share it. I'll do some research. If you guys want to talk about mythology, let me know. I will happily dedicate an episode to that. If you guys have ghost stories, send it in, thehauntedride.com, or email thehauntedride@gmail.com. Subscribe to the show, share the show, be interactive, and let me know that you're out there because I like knowing that you guys are here. And thank you again for being a part of the show. Thank you again for viewing and listening to the show, for tuning in every week, for subscribing. I really appreciate it. You guys are great. So before I sound any worse or get any more emotional, because I'm way too grateful about all of this, have an amazing day. Have an amazing night wherever you are. I know this comes out on Monday, so some people tend to be kind of negative about Mondays because it's a work day, but don't go into it with that mentality. Go into it with a positive spirit and a positive force, so that if something bad does happen, then it's just a tiny little thing. Don't let it ruin your day. But anyway, guys, have a good one, and don't let the ghost get you. Bye.